I got big plans to set up a gold mine and run it my way. We do have a 1,000-ounce goal. This is a big gamble, so me and Faith have to make this work.
Everything changed in a single night. One signature, one decision, and an entire mining season vanished without warning. Kevin Beets was tangled in endless paperwork, trying to fight a sudden ban when the land itself seemed to turn against him. Phones went dead. Crews stopped mid-task. Equipment froze as if the ground had swallowed its heartbeat. Hundreds of miles away in the Yukon, Parker Schnabel noticed what no one else did. Not the ban, but the gap it created. No announcements, no press coverage, just a sudden emptiness where work once thrived. That emptiness didn't last. While others argued over Kevin's next move, Parker asked a different question. What happens to land that can't wait? To claims packed with gold, but suddenly locked down? This wasn't luck, it was an opening. A narrow window, vanishing by the hour. And the moment Parker saw it, hesitation was impossible. Only action. Before we jump in, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because blink and you'll miss it all. It didn't begin with chaos. No dramatic confrontation, no warning meeting. It began with silence, the kind that only shows up when something massive has already gone wrong. 1 minute, Kevin Beets' crews were cycling excavators, moving dirt like any other day in the Klondike. The next, everything stopped. Not slowed, not paused, stopped. Radios quiet, engines dead, machines frozen, as if the land itself had pulled the plug. The ban came quietly, no shouting, no arguments, just a stack of paperwork, landing with cold finality, a regulatory halt, immediate and absolute. And the speed? That's what shook everyone. There was no warning, no drawn-out legal struggle, just surgical precision. Miners know the difference between bureaucracy and punishment, and this felt like punishment. Cameras captured Kevin in motion, then confusion. No speeches, no rebellion. Just a man processing how an operation alive one moment could be legally dead the next. Crew members froze, not out of orders, but because there was literally nothing left to do. When mining stops like this, it's more than lost hours. Momentum disappears, leverage evaporates, ground goes cold, and sometimes forever. And the ground mattered. Everyone understood that, even if no one said it aloud. This wasn't a tired claim at the season's edge. This was active, promising ground, the kind you don't shut down unless absolutely forced. Gold still lay beneath the surface, untouched, exposed in a rare, fragile window. Ownership on paper didn't guarantee control in reality. In the Klondike, gold doesn't wait for appeals. Even before the ban, Kevin had moved cautiously. Test pans returned heavier than expected, but no bold push forward yet. Insiders noticed. Hesitation like that usually signals one of two things: uncertainty or strategy. Looking back, every tiny delay now felt like a clue. Kevin wasn't sitting on marginal ground. This was prime, high-grade territory, the sort of claim seasoned miners watch from afar. Test results hinted at an undiscovered channel, deep, ancient, packed with gold. The kind of hidden flow that turns an ordinary season into a career-defining strike. Ground density readings spoke volumes: weight, pressure, history. Parker knew how to read that story faster than anyone else. And the moment the ban hit, one name quietly circulated, not in headlines, not on forums, but in whispers: Parker. He'd seen this pattern before. Operations freeze and gaps appear. And gaps in mining are invitations. A ban doesn't just stop work. It creates a vacuum. Rules lag behind reality. Kevin's claim remained his, legally, but opportunity, That was bleeding away by the hour. Every idle day was a loss. Millions in potential waiting underground were slipping through the cracks. Others noticed, but hesitated. Regulations train miners to pause, to wait. No one wants the next shutdown notice. No one wants inspectors scrutinizing their every move. Parker didn't hesitate. Not recklessly, but because he understood timing. Windows like this don't send reminders. They close, sometimes overnight, sometimes silently. And the ones who win aren't the cautious. They're the ones who act while everyone else debates. Quietly, Parker began recalculating. Equipment, permits, legal wording that allowed temporary movement, stabilization, readiness. Phrases that sound harmless until real dirt starts moving. This wasn't a hostile takeover. On paper, Kevin still owned the claim. In practice, Parker was positioning himself. Proximity equals power. Kevin was fighting a decision while the industry had already moved to the question that mattered. Who would act first? Uncertainty is leverage in mining. And while Kevin focused on appeals, the ground waited for the one who already understood it. Parker wasn't caught off guard. This ground hadn't appeared suddenly. Months earlier, his scouts had flagged subtle signals others ignored. Topography mismatched history, gravel hinted at older flows, drill patterns suggested strategy rather than hope. Parker followed the trail immediately. Where Kevin drills, gold follows. Always, not with fanfare, not immediately, but steadily, consistently. That's why the ban didn't feel like chaos to Parker. It felt like clarity. All the usual obstacles, rivalries, negotiations, pride, hesitation, vanished. There were no deals to debate, no personalities to navigate, no backroom politics. Just a claim frozen by regulation, and a clock that didn't care about explanations. For Parker, that simplified everything. When emotion disappears, only numbers remain. And Parker has always trusted numbers more than people. He didn't need permission to start calculating, he just needed time. And time was exactly what Kevin didn't have. Parker moved faster than the paperwork could even arrive. Analyzing permit language, temporary allowances, environmental clauses that let him stabilize ground and mitigate risk. He wasn't breaking rules. He was reading them smarter, faster, more aggressively than anyone else. And in mining, that difference changes everything. This wasn't bold. It wasn't confrontational. It was survival-level strategy. Parker understood something most miners learn too late. Opportunity rarely shows up neatly. It disguises itself as inconvenience, uncertainty, and poor timing. And the ones who wait for clarity almost always watch someone else take the ground. While Kevin fought to lift the ban, Parker focused on positioning himself exactly where the ground was already speaking. No announcements, no confrontation. Just equipment quietly shifting under permits that sounded harmless enough to avoid scrutiny. Temporary support, stabilization, minimal disturbance. Regulators nodded because on paper, nothing aggressive was happening. But in the Klondike, preparation is never neutral. Once iron hits dirt, everything changes. The first strips were cautious, almost restrained, not Parker's usual all-out approach, but intentional. He wasn't chasing speed. He was chasing confirmation. And confirmation came fast. Color appeared almost immediately. Not random flood gold, but structured, consistent, unmistakable. The kind that signals a deeper channel. Every bucket wasn't just dirt. It was data. Every pass through the plant validated what scouts had seen months ago. This ground wasn't waiting to be discovered. It was waiting to be touched. Kevin watched, legally present but operationally powerless. He wasn't fighting Parker. The real battle was the clock, and it had already chosen a side. Appeals take weeks, reviews take months. Meanwhile, Parker's excavators moved. Wash plants, processed pay dirt, and each bucket quietly rewrote reality. On paper, Kevin still owned the claim. In practice, control was shifting by the hour. Crew dynamics followed momentum, not loyalty. Temporary help, short-term contracts, quiet decisions. Nothing dramatic, just motion. The ban didn't merely halt Kevin's operation. It revealed how fragile control becomes when activity stops. By the time he grasped what was happening, the transfer wasn't official, but it was real. Systems had changed. Dirt flow had changed. The rhythm of the ground no longer matched his operation. Even if the ban lifted tomorrow, momentum wouldn't reset. Mining doesn't rewind. It favors whoever is already moving. Then the numbers hit. Gold didn't trickle in. It announced itself. The wash plant lit up. Not marginal gains, not hopeful trends. Volume, density, and consistency impossible to ignore. Parker expected confirmation, maybe gradual validation. Instead, he got proof. Organized, structured gold. Buried channels delivering exactly what geological models predicted. Nuggets appeared consistently, size variation telling the story of older flows, slower water, heavier deposition. The buried channel theory was no longer speculation. It was fact. First touch gold, untouched ground, releasing what it had held for centuries. Early weigh-ins shocked even Parker's inner circle. Plans were rewritten, targets adjusted. What began as strategic positioning suddenly carried season-level consequences. The claims were no longer risky or temporary. Language shifted quietly, decisively. This wasn't an experiment. It was an anchor. And for Kevin, the timing couldn't have been worse. The ban didn't exist in isolation. It reverberated because of the name attached. Beets. In the Klondike, that name carries weight, history, expectations. When a Beets operation stalls, the industry doesn't see a pause. They see a crack. Tony Beets didn't react publicly. No statements, no interviews. In mining, silence is never neutral. It's analyzed, debated, interpreted. Inside the family, tension was quiet, but heavy. Pride clashed with protocol. Decisions that were once routine now carried generational consequences. The fight wasn't just about lifting a ban, it was about protecting a legacy built on defiance, resilience, and results. Conversation shifted from ounces to optics, reputation, and narrative control. Because when gold starts flowing elsewhere, under circumstances like this, stories spread faster than facts, and stories are dangerous. Meanwhile, Parker applied no pressure, made no statements, celebrated nothing. He accelerated, more ground, faster cycles, cleaner logistics, every move precise, every hour treated as borrowed time. Windows like this don't announce their closing, they just vanish. And Parker knew, every ounce pulled strengthened his position, not through ownership, but performance. In the long run, regulators don't just look at paperwork, they look at results. Regulators don't just check paperwork, they watch results, stability, efficiency. Parker delivered all three in real time. His operation didn't just run, it optimized. Systems synced faster than expected. Ground responded predictably. Every process became smoother, tighter, more resilient. And that's where the power shift became obvious. The Beets empire wasn't falling apart, but for the first time, its vulnerabilities were exposed. Not because of incompetence or bad claims, but because momentum had shifted. In mining, momentum is everything. Once it moves, reclaiming it costs more than gold. Parker didn't need to assert dominance. The numbers did it for him. Strategy outweighed sentiment. Timing outweighed tradition. While others were still processing what had happened, he was operating as if every second mattered, because it did. And then, the whispers started. Soft at first. Phone calls, off-camera conversations, subtle remarks. But the message was clear. This ban wasn't temporary. Not the way people hoped. Not the way red tape usually works. Reviews stalled. Responses remained vague. Timelines stretched without explanation. Waiting was no longer neutral. It was risky. What had been framed as temporary control now felt permanent. Parker's presence wasn't provisional anymore. It was operational, normalized. The claim didn't look borrowed. It looked managed, maintained, advancing. And when a system functions this smoothly, disrupting it becomes difficult. Stability becomes its own defense. Quiet capital began moving. Not flashy headlines, no public statements, just subtle support. Equipment upgraded, logistics expanded, approvals came faster than expected. Investors follow certainty, and Parker had it. Measurable, profitable, unstoppable momentum. Meanwhile, Kevin's appeal still existed, but its practical influence was shrinking. Not due to lack of merit, but because reality moved faster than bureaucracy. Every ounce Parker extracted weakened Kevin's position. The longer the delay, the more the appeal became symbolic. A statement, not a solution. The shift wasn't sudden. It leaned, then tipped decisively. By the time anyone acknowledged it, it had already happened. Kevin's realization didn't come from a phone call or a ruling. It came from footage, visual proof. When he saw the site again, not as it was, but as it had become, the truth hit immediately. The ground no longer reflected his operation. Its rhythm had changed. Flow patterns altered. Every system moved differently. Dirt moved where it hadn't before. Bottlenecks were gone. Efficiency was built into every pass. Gold wasn't being extracted Kevin's way. It was Parker's way. And in mining, that distinction matters more than ownership. Even if the ban lifted tomorrow, nothing would revert. Momentum doesn't roll backward. Crews don't forget new systems. Investors don't erase proven returns. The land itself had been reinterpreted through a new operational philosophy. This wasn't a loss on paper. It was structural, strategic, irreversible. And that's the harsh truth of the Klondike. You can lose without ever being directly beaten. The region doesn't care about fairness. It doesn't reward patience. It rewards timing, decisiveness, and the ability to act inside uncertainty. Kevin was forced to pause by rules and regulations, and pauses in the Klondike are expensive. Parker moved because opportunity doesn't wait for permission. The land chose who was ready, not who was first, not who had legacy, not who was right. Ready meant present, active, moving. And that's the reality of mining in the Klondike. Success isn't given. It's earned in motion. Once Parker touched the ground, every following decision, every bucket, every cycle reinforced his advantage. The terrain itself began to tell a story, one of precision, patience, and timing. Kevin could have returned tomorrow, could have lifted the ban, could have rallied his crews, but the window Parker had seized was gone. Not because of rules, not because of lack of effort, but because momentum doesn't wait. Every ounce of gold Parker pulled became more than wealth. It became leverage. It reshaped perception. It rewrote expectations. Investors, crews, regulators, even competitors, they all saw it. The ground rewarded those who act decisively, those who understand opportunity when it arrives in disguise. By the time the season's numbers were finalized, the story was undeniable. Parker hadn't just worked the claim, he had commanded it. controlled it, made it his own, not through ownership alone, but through execution. And the lesson is clear. In the Klondike, waiting is a choice. Momentum is everything. Legacy can't replace action. History doesn't protect hesitation. Gold doesn't respect law or legacy. It responds only to those present, those willing to move while others hesitate. By the end, the verdict was written not on paper, not in appeals, but in the wash plant, the excavators, the shifting earth itself. Whoever was ready, whoever acted, whoever understood the land, the ground had chosen. And in this game, that choice is final. The gold didn't recognize appeals. It didn't honor history. It responded only to motion, pressure, and timing. By the season's end, the story had already written itself. Not with drama, not with confrontation, but with quiet, unstoppable momentum. The Klondike delivered its verdict the way it always does, without explanation, without apology. Gold doesn't care who owned it first. It only cares who touched it.